Why polarity is gender specific. That's going to be the topic of this live stream today. It's a really important one, and it's a very controversial one. And it creates a lot of controversy within the masculine and feminine polarity community. And I love controversy, so I'm going to make my stand here and explain why polarity really is gender specific and why most polarity coaches have got this so wrong and are really misleading people. Now, there's so many ways I could go. There's so many ways I could literally spend hours on this topic, and there is no way to, at least that I'm aware of, to fully prove this 100%. There's no randomized controls trial that I can give you that's going to be like, hey, this is why I'm right. This is more about a combination of both my personal experiences in my life, seeing what happens with my clients, and just having a general understanding of everything in the world, like biology, for example. So I'm going to go into a bit of all of those pieces, and people can decide for themselves what they think. So first of all, I'm going to talk about my own personal experience as a man. So first of all, prior to meeting my wife, I spent 9 years just meeting women, just going out and dating, having sex. I was the ultimate Peter Pan. I never had a stable job during any of that time, just messed around. I was developing myself in so many ways, pushing myself to be the funniest person I could be, and playful and confident in so many ways. And as well as a lot of really feminine stuff, right? Like learning to just really cry and be in my emotions and process things that way, and meditate for 10 days at a time, doing like literally nothing, all kinds of stuff. But throughout that entire journey, my responsibility was to myself and only myself. I just didn't feel a sense of responsibility for anyone else. And I didn't really want to, that because of that, I didn't really want to lead either. I could lead, I was capable of it. I had to lead a lot to meet women, but it was more like a means to an end. It was really more about myself. And then I met my wife. And who is my wife? Well, as far as like the most masculine personality type I could have met, right? If anyone knows Enneagram, she's an Enneagram 8, right? She's all about being in control, having self-control, having power over herself. Talk about as far as a polarized relationship where the man is leading and the woman is submitting, and as well as just being expressive and opening her heart. I definitely created the biggest challenge for myself. But the reason there's many reasons I chose her. She's an amazing woman, but one of the main reasons I chose her was because she was so hyper independent, right? And I was so hyper independent, and I didn't have to really take care of her, or so I thought. And because I just didn't feel the need. And I saw those relationships where other men were taking care of their woman, and I'm like, oh my God, that's a hell of a lot of work. That sounds really codependent and terrible. And so we got married, and what happened? Well, interestingly, even though we have these very, both of us have very strong, picture's very blurry. Shit, that is my internet connection. Can you hear me fine, Jessica? My internet sucks today. Hopefully everyone can at least hear me fine, and then just have to deal with the picture. Okay, good. So you can hear me. Great. So sorry, I lost my train of thought. So I was in this relationship, and our trigger points were, guess what? I got triggered whenever my wife tried to lead in any way, right? Trying to get outcomes. And my wife would get triggered when I wasn't taking care of her, even though we had these kind of personality types that were really based on, taking care of ourselves and all this kind of stuff. And the reason that all shifted, and it shifted so rapidly and fundamentally, is that we had a child. And many of you know this story already, right? Like, I had a child, and immediately I felt different about my son in a way that I've never felt about anyone, even close. I felt 100% desire to just want to devote myself in every way to him, to provide for him, to protect him fully, right? I would have done literally anything, right? And he was born with brain damage. He was born stuck in sick kids hospital for weeks. And that opened me up in a way that I didn't think was possible. And I realized when that happened, I very quickly realized, wow, I have been so wounded in so many ways. I am actually living in trauma in so many ways. And it was this event that really shifted everything for me, right? For the first time, I felt what full devotion for a man is supposed to feel like. And then all of a sudden, what also happened? I wanted to lead everything. And I had to lead everything, right? Because as a man, I only feel desire to devote when it's through my leadership. And whenever, eventually, like, I just wanted to do everything. I protect him from doctors and make all these decisions to keep him safe and all of this stuff. And then when we took him home and my wife started, asking me to get diapers and leading in that way, all of a sudden I hated my life again, right? For a brief period of time, I was the one that was fully in charge. And then as soon as it got back into that kind of mothering thing, I just felt like a total slave. And it was that time that I discovered polarity. I realized what it was, and I realized that I had been living in a traumatized state where I was afraid. I didn't consciously feel this fear, but I was afraid of really meeting other people's needs, because if I put too much energy and time and money and whatever into that, what if my needs don't get met, right? And from there, we just started polarizing our relationship. And we started fixing all of the problems that we had in our relationship, all of the irritation, all of the issues that we had. And so I had spent actually years teaching men how to meet women and how to engage with women and all this stuff prior to this event, right? This is the event that really allowed me to step into my devotion, right? I felt devotion for the first time, first for my child, and then what I realized, the reason that I didn't feel it with my wife is because she was trying to lead and get outcomes so much, and she wasn't in her heart. And it wasn't until I started leading her into her heart and leading her to let go of control that I started feeling the same kind of devotion for my son that I was for her that I had felt for my son already. It's not possible otherwise. Men are programmed to devote to women that respect them. And when a woman is trying to lead, he is not being respected. Okay. And so, okay, where to go from here? There's a few ways. So first of all, prior to this, I was spending a lot of time, years before, spending a lot of time talking to men and teaching men a lot of this kind of stuff about leading and about engaging with women and being successful with women. And I didn't have this devotional piece at all, right? And so I was essentially playing with an incomplete deck. I was teaching from a place where I was not fully embodied. Even though I was quite successful with women, I was a fucking child. Like, energetically, I was a child. I just wanted to have fun, and my polarity was back and forth. Like, I could go from literally, crying and expressing all my feelings and just letting go of all control and that stuff, to leading if I have to. And I can go back and forth. And I thought, oh, this is normal. This is kind of the peak state in a human being, is to be able to do both, right? I didn't have words masculine and feminine, but to be able to have that full spectrum range of behaviors and intentions and energy, right? And I was kind of teaching the same thing all around, like, self-worth and confidence. And I did that for years. And it's kind of embarrassing even to look back and be like, that was what I was doing. But this is why I have such an issue with coaches that are teaching polarity that are not fully embodied. Because if you are not fully embodied in this, if you are still living in your trauma, and it isn't necessarily the trauma that I had, right? It can be a different kind of trauma. It can be, a fear of leading everything in a relationship, right? It can be a fear of asserting yourself and telling your woman, like, hey, don't tell me, don't say, can you go get me some candy from the store, which is leading, right? When a woman does that, that is literally a directive, a soft directive. And a man needs to be able to stop that and get her asking by asking permission or something like that. Which sounds extremely black and white, but for any man who is in touch with who's really in touch with his instinct, right, and is not living in mental BS programs that we've been indoctrinated in our entire life, he will feel in his body. And when his woman leads in that way, that will feel irritating. It will. And there's a reason for it. In a dream relationship, in a truly polarized relationship, neither partner is getting irritated or like drained in any way. A man's devotion just feels incredibly energizing the entire time to him. He loves serving his woman all the time, all the time. Nothing feels like work, just feels like fun. It feels like joy. Oh my God, I get to serve my woman. And then it's the same for a woman. Oh, I just get to let go of control and just receive my man's leadership. This is just easy and fun. Once the trauma is gone, right? Once you've moved through that and you've just healed it. But if there's coaches that are living from a more limited place where they are not embodied and they're up in their head and they are trying to conceptualize this masculine and feminine energy, yes, these can be conceptualized, but that's not living it. You're not living it. You shouldn't be living this stuff from your head. This is an embodied experience, right? An embodied experience as a man is to be fully devoted to his woman, feel fully responsible for the relationship and leading all the time. And it feels like a joy. It feels like fun. It feels like he will feel fully respected. He will feel fully energized. He will feel fully like a man all the time. And most coaches are just simply not embodied. Doesn't mean that they have nothing to offer. I'm talking about polarity coaches here. Doesn't mean they have nothing to offer, but they're not embodied in this, right? It's like I was years ago. Yeah, I had a lot to offer. I helped a lot of men, but I was operating from an incomplete deck. And that's a really big problem, because essentially what that is doing, it is enabling both men and women to stay stuck in various traumas. Right? Because imagine if I had a client that's another Peter Pan, and most of my clients were Peter Pan. Well, I'm not going to be teaching men responsibility. I'm not going to be teaching men devotion. I'm not going to be teaching men to stop their woman from leading anything, right? And so it's a completely different framework that's being operated from. And yeah, I can go way into my masculine back then, and I could go way into my feminine. Now I just have no interest. I only have an interest in being in my masculine, because that is my responsibility. That is how I serve my woman. That is how I serve the world. Why the hell would I want to go into my feminine? Not that I'm not capable. Why the hell would I want to do it? There's no reason to. And so I want to go a bit into biology here. Like, why the hell would we be programmed this way? Okay, so I don't care if your beliefs are like, hey, we were put here by God, or we manifested here, or it all came from evolution, we came from monkeys, whatever you believe. It ultimately doesn't matter. Let's just look at the way we are programmed and why we would be programmed that way. So the reason that we're programmed this way is because women have uteruses. That's ultimately what it is. Women have a uterus and men don't. Oh, and women have boobs, and they make breast milk, and men don't. So what is going to happen, like if you are looking at gene survival here, and now I'm going to get more kind of intellectual and biological here. So for gene survival, we are programmed for maximizing our chances of gene survival. And it makes sense that women have a primary feminine programming, right? Because what is she going to be doing? She's going to be raising, nurturing a child in her uterus for 9 months, right? Do you think that it is a good idea to be out doing really draining, stressful activities and like asserting yourself for those 9 months? Think about what is going to happen to your hormone levels. Is that going to be conducive for maximum health of the fetus if she's in that mode? If she's like a CEO, if she's out hunting bison, if she's out fighting, I don't know, some other tribe that's attacking them? No, that's going to be really bad. That's not going to be conducive at all. And then once the child is born, it's the same thing, where who's producing the milk? Who is producing the food for the child? It's the woman. It's not the man's nipples, right? It is the woman's nipples. And so she has to be maximizing that production. She has to be in a low stress state. She has to be more passive and relaxing. And ideally, well, she still needs to get her needs met. So how is she going to get her needs met? Well, by receiving from who? Who's she going to be receiving from? Who's going to provide for her? Well, the masculine, the man, right? The man who is naturally more muscular, who has stronger bone density, who is more capable of wrestling that bison to the ground, who's capable of killing that warring tribe, whose nipples are not needed to produce milk, right? And so we are naturally more capable and programmed for being the protectors, for being the providers. Our genes are already in the hands of the woman who is taking care of the child, right? Like, why would we be programmed like this? Well, because our bodies are completely different, and it makes more sense for our division of labor to help bring this child and make him or her as healthy as possible for our survival of the species and survival of our genes. That's why, right? Now, is a woman capable of stepping into her masculine? Yes, because if like some rapist came into the tribe or something, it would be great if she's able to step into her masculine to defend him off. If her man is off, killing bison, she needs to be capable of trying to lead herself and get outcomes for her child, right? So she's capable of it, right? But she's not programmed for it as part of her primary physiology. And that's why when women have to be doing all this work and meeting their own needs, it's draining as fuck to do it. It's not that a woman is not fully capable. I mean, a woman can become fully capable of doing that, right? But it is draining because she's operating on an entirely different program than what she's naturally wired for. And if you think about it, this is a really beautiful thing. And I know this because I had a child. Like, I was so energized to provide and protect from, right? Like, man, I would have like beaten down, a horde of doctors making terrible decisions. And that was energizing for me. It was scary as hell, but it was energizing. But I love taking care of them for moments at a time, right? And like, just trying to get them to sleep and bouncing them up and down, but it drained the hell out of me. And I'm talking about like a number of minutes. And why is it draining? Well, because the child is actually the one that's leading. The baby is the one that is leading. Okay. And no, the baby's not saying, hey, go get me a bottle. Go put me to sleep now. My diaper's filled with shit. Please clean it. Right. He's not leading in that way, but he's leading with cues, and that is difficult for a man to do because a man is not programmed to submit to somebody else's leadership, whether it's his woman's or infants or whatever. Yes, he can do it. He is capable of doing it. And yes, it is going to be very draining very quickly, extremely quickly. Whereas for a woman, yes, of course, it still gets draining to do that 12 hours a day, no doubt. But that is what she is programmed to do. She is programmed to submit to leadership. And it, like, you can think of it like Montessori even, it's like following the child, right? If we're talking about teaching methodologies, right? It is the child that is leading, and it is the woman that is submitting to that leadership to give the child what the child needs. It's not the woman that is putting her inner vision on the child. It certainly shouldn't be, especially not an infant. It is her submitting to make sure that all of the child's needs are met. Oh, he starts crying. Okay, here's a bottle, or here's a blanket, or here's my chest, or whatever it is, right? And that feels natural. It feels natural to submit in that way and meet the child's needs. Whereas a man, what is a man doing? He wants to create his inner vision, right? What is his inner vision? The protection of his family, of his child, of his woman, of his community, building something, right? That is what is energizing. That is what is inspiring. It is a completely different program, even though he can do both. Yes, he can. So if you look at this from a historical point of view, from a biological point of view, it makes perfect sense why there is this, why polarity is gender specific, and why both man and woman are capable of being in both energies if they need to, but why one energy feels natural and right and energizing, and why the other energy feels draining and terrible, especially to be in for any length of time, right? And especially to be in with your partner. Because the other part I didn't even get into, this is the other part of it. If we're looking at the gene survival here, why would a man have any interest in devoting all of his resources, all of his time, all of his energy, all of his love to a woman who is not submitting to him sexually? Think about that for a second. We are programmed, before we're capable of doing all this amazing stuff and building iPhones and all this, we're programmed for gene survival, right? So if a man was like just devoting to every single woman that doesn't submit to him sexually, doesn't submit to his genes, to his sperm, then what is going to happen? Think about what's going to happen. He's going to drain himself of all of his resources. He's not going to spread his genes, and his genes are going to die out. They're going to die out, right? It is the man who is only devoted to the woman who is sexually submitting to him, where it is in his genes' best interest, right? Think of my genes. Like, yeah, I want to devote to my woman, because if I devote to her and give her all these resources and make her life easier, she's going to have a lot more energy to take care of our child. And then our child can grow up and continue on our genes, and my genes are not going to die out, right? And so from a pure biological perspective, it makes a lot of sense why, just because of the way we're wired. It's not just about sexual submission, it's about all submission. Whenever a woman is trying to get an outcome with a man, he will feel in his body this response of irritation. Oh, something doesn't feel right. I don't like this. He will feel that if he's not completely disassociated from his instinct, right? And if he knows how to lead in a healthy way, then he will lead his woman into respecting him, into submitting, so that he can feel devotional again, right? Like for me with my wife, like I don't want to feel irritated with her. And it's not just because I don't like feeling irritated. It's because I want to be fully devotional to her. There's no better feeling in the world for me than devoting to my woman, to making her feel good, to providing for her, for protecting her. But if I feel disrespected, it just immediately, okay, this doesn't feel good. That is my genes telling me something is wrong. It needs to be fixed. Fucking lead your way out of this, right? And it's the same thing for a woman, right? You are instinctually wired to want a devoted man, right? Because it is a genetic disaster if you submit to men that have no interest in devoting, right? Not to mention it, no level of dominance either, which is makes it much worse. But yeah, like think about how bad it feels in your body, right? And some of that is going to be trauma, of course, as well. But there's also just the body response that's warning you something is wrong here. This does not feel good. This does not feel good to submit to this man, and I am not getting devotion. Your body's warning you. It's warning you that if you continue doing this, your genes are going to die. Because imagine sleeping, like, you know, before condoms and everything, imagine sleeping with this man, he impregnates you with his genes, and then you're all by yourself trying to take care of this child. You don't have government welfare. You don't have the ability to support yourself. That's going to be a really big problem for your genes, isn't it? You might die. Your child is probably going to die. There's big repercussions. So of course, so any woman who is programmed in a different way, her genes are going to die out. So the women that are left are programmed to have this need for devotion and to feel really bad when they don't get it, right? So that's why this is gender specific. It's so obviously gender specific. And this whole polarity, fluidity, you can be a man, you can be a woman, you can be a feminine man, you can be a masculine woman, and it's all good and it's all beautiful. No, it's not. It goes completely against our programming. And when you are in that mode, right, and there's like literally movements like female-led relationships. Like I looked at a website about that. I threw up. It's like, it's so against your programming to do something like that. You are literally just living out your trauma. You are living out your trauma. And I mean, okay, if people want to do that, if you want to like have a trauma-led relationship, okay, if that's what you really want, I really don't recommend it, because it's not going to be nearly as fulfilling as a devotional, submissive union where both man and woman get their needs fully met and they heal all of their trauma. But, you know, if that's what you want, totally go for it. That's on you. But it's important to see that if you are compelled to want something like that, it's your trauma. And that's one of the reasons why I am such a triggering person. It's also because I'm really blunt and all this other stuff, but just the information that I am giving people, right? It's going to trigger all of that trauma, because I am telling you, like, how you are right now is not okay. Now, it doesn't mean you can't still love yourself and accept yourself. Of course, definitely do that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't accept and love yourself. But what I am saying is you shouldn't just be passive and stay where you are. Stay in your trauma, right? Now, I, to an extent, was lucky that I was forced out of my trauma in a huge way, where I just, I couldn't not do what I was doing with my son. Like, I just loved him so much that, of course, that's what I'm going to do. But of course, I still had to do tons of my own work in addition to that, especially with my wife, where I realized, like, wow, I feel really uncomfortable leading. But for me, I was gifted because I went from literally not even knowing what the hell devotion was and thinking it was a real thing to feeling 100% devotion. And it is the most beautiful fucking thing a man could ever experience. A total devotion for somebody else. It is the most beautiful thing. And to be able to feel that way all the time, and just your heart is 100% open and you are just leading. And of course, because it's an infant, it's not like I'm ever getting disrespected by an infant, because he's not telling me what to do or anything. But so it was easy for me to have my heart stay fully open all the time, right? But then with my woman, it was like, oh, I really want this. Okay, this polarized relationship sounds really cool. But why am I getting angry at her and irritated with her all the time and I don't feel devotion, right? I realized, like, okay, once I started learning about polarity, I realized, like, okay, that feeling with my child is how I can feel with my wife. That is possible. This is what a devoted man feels like. I need to learn how to get there. I need to learn how to get there. And then it was a long period of trial and error and learning to lead and push through all my fears and see all the ways that my woman was irritating the hell out of me and get her to stop doing that and feeling extremely uncomfortable. Like, is this right? Like, do I have a right to do this? Do I have a right to impose my leadership in this way on somebody else, on my woman? Like, shouldn't she just be able to do whatever the hell she wants, as long as she's not like screaming at me and telling me to fuck off? like, should I really be leading her even like with this language and feminine communication and all this kind of stuff? Yeah, there's a lot of programming there. That programming is attached to trauma, right? That the intellectual programming that I'd been indoctrinated with, and pretty much every man's been indoctrinated with, is attached to trauma. And that's why it feels really uncomfortable to push through it, because that is what is in the way of you becoming fully dominant as a man. That's what's in the way. Your fear and your excuses and all that kind of stuff. Right? And you can't be dominant as long as you are letting that stuff rule you. You've got to move past the trauma. And you've got to move past the trauma, and you've got to realize that it's something to move through. You've got to see where the goal is. You got to see what that non-traumatized state is. And this is getting back to these polarity coaches that are not embodied, and they're trying to teach us in a conceptual way that they don't have an understanding of, because they're not actually living it. They are giving people information to make them feel safe and comfortable and have excuses to stay trapped in their trauma. That's ultimately what it is, right? Oh, you know what? Like, I'm already like perfect the way I am. I can already, I'm polarity fluid and whatever. I can cry and I can also lead, and I'm healed now. No, you're not. You're not even close. Just like I wasn't even close when I could do that. Not even close. I don't give people those excuses. I don't, because I'd be doing everyone a disservice. I'm not saying these coaches are like lying to you on purpose. Probably not. I doubt that. So they're lying to themselves, and then they're lying to everybody else by mistake. It's not because they're trying to deceive for their business. I don't think so. Maybe some, but I don't think most. Is that they're lying to themselves, and then everyone else gets deceived. And you can see this in every area of the spiritual movement too, right? Because there's so many leaders, whether coaches or spiritual figures or whatever it is, that are living in so much trauma, and then are leading so many people astray because of that, right? And that's a really, really big problem. Like, it's important that whoever you are, you know, following and taking guidance from, that you're really able to trust them. And I honestly, like, personally, I just wouldn't trust anyone who isn't embodied in this. Like, I wouldn't, because they're living it from a more conceptual place, and then they're just not going to be able to lead you where you need to be led, essentially. Is there anything I didn't answer in this? There's a whole bunch of Q&A. I might answer that for another video. Just don't have time to get into all of it today. Oh, it's not natural or healthy. Okay. So how can we help you heal this trauma and your love life? By giving you the tools and understanding to master polarity. This is what we do. This is what I love doing. This is what I'm here to help serve you with, right? And do it really fast, right? I spent, like, even prior to my polarizing thing that I did in my marriage, you know, I spent 9 years like pushing through fears and doing all of this stuff like daily. Like, I've done a lot of work prior to that. And then I did this in my relationship really intensely too. There's a lot of stuff, and there's just so many mistakes. There's so many mistakes. There's so many ways that your mind can, you know, get you trapped in excuses and going down the wrong path, and you know, keeping you passive and making sure that you don't do the work, or you do the wrong work. And before you know it, you're 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever years old, and you're still not living the relationship of your dreams. You're still not naturally polarized. You're still not attracting the kind of people you want. Or if you are in a relationship, you're not, you know, you're a woman who's not inspiring her man, or the man's not able to get his woman to fully respect him, right? And, you know, what, break up, divorce, kids, broken homes, ruined lives. There are so many consequences to this. There's so many consequences. And for me, right, like, my consequence at that time was, okay, if I don't get this figured out now, you know, I got a child with brain damage here. And then, of course, like, my wife and I are fighting all the time now, and that's going to be terrible for him, and it's going to be stressful. I got to figure this shit out now. There's no way I'm not going to figure this out now. It's got to be now. And unfortunately, I didn't have any polarity course to join or anything, but I at least had 9 years of really intense self-development to take me that last step that I really needed to fully step into my devotion. And to integrate my integrate my feminine into my masculine, right? So that instead of just expressing my feelings and blah, 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 and letting go of control and all this stuff, I'm using my feminine to just, through my leadership, to just be fully devoted in an open-hearted, loving way to my woman, right? Because that's what, when a man integrates his feminine, that's what it looks like. Just, it's leadership, it's full leadership, but it is open-hearted, devoted leadership, but also still with really strong boundaries and assertive and you know, not letting her get away with stuff that is disrespectful, and choosing to polarize the relationship, to be the visionary in the relationship and leading it towards a total polarized state. That is the man's job, and that is what we will help both men and women do, right? Whether you're a man, it's like, I don't know how to lead, I don't know how to communicate with my woman, she's going totally nuts, and she's, you know, every time I try to lead, she just gets really reactive and starts blaming me and all of this stuff. Great, that's what every single man in our dominance course, that is what the problem is, whether they're in a relationship or not. And they don't really know how to lead, and they definitely don't know how to lead a woman through her trauma. And so it's the trauma that ends up leading the relationship until eventually it's a breakup or divorce, right? And for a woman, you know, women have trouble understanding how to embody their feminine energy and just let go of control and just feel worthy enough to receive and to be fully open-hearted, heart on their sleeve, not trying to control any perception. And just, I'm just going to express whatever comes up. There's no control. I don't have to lead. And also having the self-worth to just be able to walk away, right? If a man truly isn't capable or ready to step into devotion, also having that self-worth because she deserves better, right? That is what we help women do. That's what we help you get towards, to be able to fully open up your heart and in that beautiful, vulnerable way, because it's your heart. It's like a baby. It's like a baby. It's just like, I can't not devote to you. I can't not devote to your heart. It's just so fucking beautiful. Of course I'm going to do everything. Of course I'm going to give to you. Of course I'm going to be fully devoted and provide and protect for your heart, because it's the most beautiful thing in the world and I want to take care of it, right? But a man's got to be able to fully feel that. He's got to. It can't just be something that you talk about. It's got to be real. It's got to be felt. That's what a man needs, and that's what we help you do in our Radiant Woman Academy. That's what we help you get towards, so you can just everything just becomes so simple and easy. So if you want help with this, right? Like if this is what excites you and this is what you really know is what you want in your life, and you want that really polarized relationship, whether you're with someone or not right now, but you know that you want to polarize yourself, you know that you want that dream relationship, you know that it is so important to you, and it might excite you and it might terrify you at the same time, and that's okay, as long as you as long as you really want to make this shift and stop making excuses, right? And stop living in fear. Then book a call with me so we can talk more about it. We'll just talk all about what's going on, and it doesn't have to be this way any longer. It really doesn't. I know from that mindset, I've been in some really horrible mindsets before where I just felt really stuck and like, okay, other people can do this, but I can't. Why the fuck can't you do it? Of course you can. Every single person can do this. Every person is capable. You just need the right guidance. You just need the right support. You just need the right container. You just need the right information. You just need the right motivation. Of course you can do it. Of course you can have absolutely everything that you want in life. I 100% believe that, and there's no reason that you can't have that. But you need to make that choice to get it. And that starts with booking a call with me, and we'll talk all about it. We're just going to talk about what you're going through and see if our solution is right for you. relationshipofyourdreams.com. Book a call with me and we'll talk.